Welcome back to Simbright Fashion Academy YouTube channel for another interesting tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll be teaching you how to sew this beautiful BUBU kaftan with yoke and strips, and it has ruffles on the sleeves as well. So you can see the two pockets right here, and it has slits by the side. So this is what I got right here. You can see the strips, the yoke, the ruffles on the sleeves, the pockets. It actually has a canoe neckline as well. This dress is looking very gorgeous and beautiful, and you can use it for any occasion of your choice. You can see the slits right here. So I'll be teaching you the tips and tricks to making this beautiful dress with canoe neckline and side pockets with ruffles as well. So if this is what you want to learn in this class, I will encourage you to stay till the end of this tutorial. So I'm making use of 6 yards of Ankara fabric and Duffel satin fabric for my yoke combination and velvet bias strips. So I'm going to open up the 6 yards of Ankara and I'm going to fold it to my hip circumference, divide by 4 plus 3 inches. So whatever your hip circumference divide by 4, just add 3 inches to it. And that is what I got right here. So here I am making use of 15 inches. So I'm adjusting my fabric to 15 inches because that is what my calculation gave me. So first is to make a border line of 1 inch. So that is my starting line. We are going to take the measurement of my chest line. My chest line is 9 inches. I'll add ½ inch to it, which is 9.5. This is your shoulder to your hip. Mine is 17. I added ½ inch, which is 17.5. My hip is 29. I added ½ inch, which is 29.5. Then my hem line, I'm making use of 65 inches for my hem line. So you can make it 60, 62, 65 inches. So I'm going to highlight all these lines, okay? And we'll start our drafting. So now we are going to impute the shoulder measurement. My shoulder is 15 divided by 2. I added ½ inch, which is 8 inches. I marked it on the shoulder line and on the chest line. So next, I'm going to mark my natural neckline of 3 inches. I'll come down by 1 inch. This is just to get the shoulder slant. Then I'm connecting a straight line to the chest line. And I'm going to get the midpoint of that straight line. I went in by ½ inch. So I marked ½ inch. And I'm going to connect with a straight line to the tip of that shoulder slant. Then I'm going to take the measurement of my bust circumference divide by 4. Then add 1.5 inches for seam allowance and for ease, 1.5 inches. So I'm going to connect from that midpoint of ½ inch to the chest line for my armhole for the front. We are going to draft the front and back together. So I'm going to also connect from that straight line on the midpoint to the chest line. Then on my waist, I'm marking my waist circumference divide by 4. Then add 2 inches for ease and for seam allowance. So I'll connect from the waist to the chest line. On the hip, I'm going to mark my hip circumference divide by 4. And I added 2 inches for ease and for seam allowance. So I'll go ahead and connect from the waist to the hip. Then I'm going to take the measurement of what I have in total on the hip line, and I'm going to mark it right there on the hem line. So whatever you have, just mark it on the hem line. Just to get a straight line, I'll also mark it in between. So I'm connecting with a straight line from that point all the way to the hip line. So we are going to go over to the shoulder line because I want to mark out the shoulder width. So the shoulder width is 6 inches. I will mark 6 inches. This is a canoe neckline. So I'll just mark 6 inches from the center front. And I'm going to mark 4.5 inches down. So just mark 6 inches by 4.5. You can use your ruler to mark, or you can use a free hand. Just make sure you get that canoe neckline, okay? So I'll just mark it down that way. So just like I said, we are creating or drafting the front and back. So that means I'm going to also mark my neck depth for the back. So I'll be using 3.5 inches for the neck depth for the back. So I'll just go ahead and connect the 3.5 inches to the 6 inches on the neck width. So if you want to use 4.5 inches for your front and back neck width, is also okay. So but I just thought of making my own a little bit higher. So the pattern is ready now. We are going to cut through the lines. So I'm just cross-checking to be sure I have the same thing I have on the hem equally. So I just go ahead and cut off this pattern. So we are going to cut out only the back armhole, okay, just the back chalk line for the armhole, then shoulder seam line and the back neckline alone. So we are going to place this front pattern on my fabric right now to cut the back piece. So I just go ahead and fold my fabric again. So make sure the fabric will be enough, including your seam allowance, your zipper allowance. So I'm adding 1 inch after folding right now. So on the printed part of the fabric, I'm adding 1 inch all the way down. So the 1 inch is for my zipper allowance. So you need to first create your zipper allowance, and that is exactly what I'm doing right here. So I'm going to mark it all the way to the hem of the dress. So next I'm going to place the front pattern, the center front pattern. I'm going to place it exactly on that 1 inch zipper line. So I make sure I placed the center front of the front dress on the 1 inch zipper line for the back. Then I'm going to secure with my pin. I'll pin them down, then we'll begin to cut out the back piece. So first you are going to extend all the lines. The back neckline, extend it to the 1 inch zipper allowance, the waist, the hip, you can see the hem. I'm trying to extend everything. I'll extend them to the center back, and I'll also make the extension on the side. So we are making all these extensions because we are going to contour the zipper line to avoid zip bulge. So after making these extensions right now, I'll just come over to the waistline. So I'm going to contour my back by 1 inch. So on the waistline, I'll just mark 1 inch on the zipper line. And I'm going to lift up my fabric and connect that 1 inch on the zipper to the tip of the neckline. You can see what I'm doing there. Then from that 1 inch on the waistline too, I'll also mark it to the line of the hip to nothing. Of course, you are familiar with the back zipper contouring. That is what I'm doing exactly on my fabric. So after that is done, next we are going to replace that contour line on the side. So I'm trying to make sure I pin the fabric very well. So on the waistline, I'm going to replace the 1 inch, and I'll check what I have on the chest line and replace it with about 1/2 inch. So I'll go ahead and connect the replacement. Then on the hip side, I did not take anything at all, so I'll just connect to nothing on the hip side. So after connecting to the hip side, then we are going to cut out the pattern. Okay, so we are done replacing right now. Next is to cut out the back pattern. So I'll just go ahead and cut the pattern. So I want you to watch how I'm cutting. So I'm just cutting through the chalk line I just made right now, and I'll take it through the armhole and then cut through the back neckline. Then I'll lift up the contour, the front piece, so I'll be able to cut out the zip contour line. So you just go ahead and cut it out following the chalk line to the hip line. So I just wanted to trim off the print, okay? Just trim it off. Alright, so we are done with the cutting. Next is to take off the front piece. So I'm taking off the front pattern because the back pattern piece is ready. So I'm going to set the back pattern piece aside, and for the front piece we are going to cut the neckline. Make sure you make your notch on the zipper line. That's what I did there. So the front piece, I'll bring it back and cut out the neckline 6 inches by width by 4.5 inches depth. Then I'll cut out the armhole for the front. So that is all for the back, for the front, and the front piece is ready as well. So now we want to create the yoke. So to create the yoke, I placed on the lines of my chest line and my waistline and marked 15 inches. So you just go ahead and mark 15 inches. Then on that outer part, I marked 2.5 inches from the sleeve. From the chest line, I marked 2.5 inches, and I'm connecting with a straight line to the 15 inches to the center front. So that would be the yoke. But I just thought of stepping down by 1 more inch. So that would be 16 inches. And I stepped up by 1/2 inch. So in other words, I would say I marked 2 inches on the side and 16 inches on the center front, because I actually wanted the yoke to be deeper. So I went ahead and cut 2 inches on the side and 16 inches on the center front and separated my yoke. So I hasted my fabric. I hasted the doll face satin fabric. You can use velvet fabric, you can use doll face, any plain fabric of your choice can serve. So I placed the yoke on top of it and then added 1/2 inch only on the down part to join the other fabric. Don't add any seam allowance any other place because we have already added it. So you can see my 1/2 inch seam allowance on the down part. So I'll take off the Ankara fabric and we are going to make use of our yoke. So for the yoke, we are going to grade our pattern so we'll be able to sew our velvet bias. So I'm going to first mark the center front. You chalk the center front. Then the bias is 1 inch and it's going to be at the center. So I'll just mark 1/2 inch on both sides because I'm placing the bias on the center. So you just mark 1/2 inch, then you start to mark 1.25, okay, or 1 inch or 1.25 because the upper piece is closer. So after marking 1/2 inch at the center front, you start marking 1.25 or 1.25 inches. You can also make it 1 inch. Then on the down piece, I'll mark 1/2 inch at the center front. Then after that, I'll start marking 2 inches. The down part is gapped at 2 inches. So I'll go ahead and mark 2 inches until I exhaust that part. So whatever you have on the up has to be equal on the down too. So on the other side, I'm marking 2 inches also. So I'll mark it all the way down. Then we begin to connect the lines. So I'll start to connect the lines. So you can see the first bias is going to sit on that 1/2 inch, making it 1 inch. Then I'll start connecting my points. So I connected and I noticed that I still need 1 more line on the upper piece. So this is what I got. After I marked the lines, I begin to stitch. So I'm going to top stitch on both sides. I first stitch the center front, then I will turn the other side and I'm going to also stitch. So you can see what I had on the back. So you just cut off the excess. So for the other one, I'll just keep it. Of course, you saw how I'm keeping it. Although I later realized that the 1.25 is too big, so I brought it closer. So you can see the other one I stitched, I brought it closer on the left hand side, so I'll be able to have that triangle shape. So you can see I brought them closer on the neckline. I later changed my plan on the upper part and brought them closer, but the down part is still 2 inches. So next I'm going to join the yoke. So this is how I'm going to join the yoke. I will turn it this way, I'll stitch one side and stitch the other with 1/2 inch. I gave it a good press. So next I'm going to put the dress together. So I put the dress together and fold my lining. So at this time you will now cut your lining. So I'm done cutting my lining and this is what I got. So next I'm going to reduce my lining by 1 inch. So make sure you reduce your lining by 1 inch because we are going to turn it, the lining with the Ankara fabric. So we are going to go over to the back. So for the back, I'll also reduce the back lining by 1 inch. So we are going to start sewing right away. So I've cut my lining for the back and I'm going to pick up one piece of it, lay it right side to right side. So I'll go over to the machine. I'm going to first stitch 1/2 inch on the downside, then I'll lift up the neckline and stitch before I stitch the sides. So I'm done stitching and this is what I got. So before I stitch the side, I'm going to make my notches. I'm going to make my notches on the neckline for the front. Then I'm going to top stitch 2. So after stitching the sides, I turned it to the right side. So the 2 is ready now. We are going to sew our zip. So I'll just flip the center back together and mark out the length of my zip. So wherever it is, I'll begin to mark 1 inch all the way down. So I'll mark 1 inch from that point of my zipper until I get to the end, and I'll go over to the machine and stitch on that 1 inch line to the end. So this is what I got right now. So I'm going to sew my zip. I'm marking 1 inch to be able to sew my zip. So I'm going to use my zipper foot to stitch my zip once I get to the machine right now. I'll open up my zip and stitch. So I gave it a good press after I'm done stitching. So here is my zip and it's looking neat and beautiful. So right now we are going to stitch the lining to the front dress. So I'm going to open up the front dress and I'm going to lay my lining on it. So I will lay my lining right side to the fabric. I'll go ahead to stitch the down, stitch the neckline too. But before I do that, I thought of adding one more bias, 2 of it, because I actually looked at the picture we are imitating and we have some velvet bias running to the armhole. So I went ahead and stitched to the armhole. Okay, so you can see what we got right there. So now we can go ahead to lay right side to right side of the lining. So first you are going to stitch in the hem, then stitch in the neckline, and then you can go ahead and make your notches on the neckline. Then flip all your seams to the lining and top stitch. So after top stitching, I went ahead to sew the sides. I gave it a good press and this is what we got. So the next step is to place right side to right side of front and back. I'm going to sew the shoulder seam line. So I'll just pick up the shoulder line and flip the lining to the front piece like this. And I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch. I will do the same for the other. You can see we have a perfect finishing right there. So next we'll start to mark out the pocket. So my pocket, I'll count at 2 inches below my waistline and mark. Then the pocket spacing is 7 inches. I'll also mark. So I'm going to transfer what I have on the front side to the back side for my pocket. So I'll also do the same on the other side. So I'm folding my fabric for my pocket. So just fold your fabric into 4 pieces, step down by 1 inch and mark 7 inches and mark your pocket. So this is how I like to mark my pocket. So you can use any method of your choice. So my pocket is ready and I'm marking the wrong sides. So we are going to stitch the right side of the pocket to the right side of the dress from that point we marked. So I'll also do the same on that point and stitch at 1/2 inch. So we are going to put the dress right side to right side, then secure with our pins, and I'm going to stitch. I'm stitching at 3/4 of an inch. Okay, my seam allowance is 0.75, so I'll just mark 0.75 and then we'll go over and stitch 1/2 inch to the pocket, come out by 0.75 again and mark that 0.75 all the way to the slit line. So I'm marking my slit line right now. I want my slit to stop 2 inches below my knee line, which is 43 inches, but you can make it 41 inches if you want. So I'll go ahead and stitch 0.75 or 3/4 of an inch now. After stitching, make sure you make a notch at the pocket to ease that part. So the next thing we are going to do is to give it a good press, open up the sleeves, slits the way you see me do now. Then you can go ahead and tack after giving it a good press, or you can use your hemming gum. So I used my hemming gum. I inserted my hemming gum. That is what I used. You can tack if you are good in tacking, but please don't stitch so your work looks nice. So next is the sleeve. So my sleeve length, I use 10 inches. You can use 12 inches if you need more ruffles, 12 or 13 inches if you need more ruffles. Then I added 1.5 inches on the sides. Make sure you add 1.5 inches on the sides of your sleeve for stitching and for ease. So I'm going to put the sleeve together and we are going to mark out on the center grain line. I'll just come down by 6 inches. So I marked 6 inches and then I'm going to connect the 6 inches to the tip of the 10 inches. I'll use my pattern ruler right now to connect it, but I thought of using my free hand because that part really needs to be curved. So I'll just go ahead and cut it out. So I'll cut it out as you can see. So that is going to be the sleeve. So I'll use it to cut out my lining. So make sure you mark the wrong size too. So I've cut out my lining. I use the sleeve to cut it out. So we are going to lay the sleeve right side to right side with the lining and the fabric. Then I'll go ahead and stitch at 1 inch. On the part I'm marking now, stitch 1 inch. In fact, on that chalk line, I've stitched and I'm chopping that part off. So I'll open it up and I'm going to lay it right side to fabric and to lining, and I'll stitch 1/2 inch. So after stitching 1/2 inch, I'm going to turn it to the right side. And then I'm going to hold the lining and the fabric and stitch with 1/2 inch up and down. So I'll go over to the machine. I'll stitch up and down 1/2 inch. Make sure you match seam lines to seam lines very well. So the sleeve is ready to carry the flans. So we'll go over to the flans. So my flans width is 30 by 30 inches. It's a squared fabric. So I'll just go ahead and place it on fold. Then get the midpoint on fold. Then I'll highlight that folded edge so I'll be able to get my midpoint. So I'll make a cardinal point at that point. So the next thing I'll do is to mark 2 inches on the cardinal points from the center. I'll create a circle to it. Then I'll extend the center line and then mark the width of my flange. The width of my flange is 5 inches including seam allowance. So I will now go ahead and create like a figure 6. Then I'll begin to mark 5 inches. So I'll mark 5 inches all the way. That is how I will keep marking 5 inches until I create my flange to the end of the fabric. So just use 30 by 30, okay, 30 inches by 30 inches. So I placed right side to right side of the plain fabric and of the Ankara fabric. So I have 2 fabrics there, and I hasted the plain fabric because that is where I want to use for the front. So where my fabric stops, I terminated. So make sure you secure with your pins before you cut. I know many of you are familiar with flange cutting, so I'll just go ahead and cut my flange the way you see me cut, right, like this. So as I'm cutting, I'll just go to the center and cut it off, and my flange is ready. So I'll place the flange on the other side of the flange. I have 2 flanges for 2 sleeves, so I placed one on top of the other. So the 2 sleeves are ready. We have the plain, we have the Ankara. So I'll just go ahead and use my crinoline to stitch. So you'll be using 3 inches crinoline. So this is how I'm going to place my crinoline. I'll place it at 1/2 inch on the opposite direction of the fabric and the lining. Then place my hemming gum and stitch at a very pinch, just very pinch, so you don't need to top stitch. So if you don't want to top stitch on your crinoline, just use this method you see me sew right now, just on the pinch. So you can see what I got right there, at 1/2 inch but on the pinch. Then now I can turn everything and I don't need to stop stitch at this point. So I'll now go ahead and give it a good press. So after pressing it down, this is what I got. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to sew this to my sleeve. So I'll turn my sleeve, I'll place right side to right side of the sleeve, and I'll begin to pleat the way I want. So I started stitching from that seam line, okay, and I'll pleat to the way I want. So just go ahead and pleat. The fabric is enough, the flange is very much enough, okay, to carry your ruffles. So I keep pleating and make sure the pleatings are also even. So I'll keep pleating until I get back to where I started. So I'm pleating. So this is what I got. I have a little remaining, so I'll just cut it off. The curvy part, I'll match it up to the straight part and cut it off. So I'll go over to the machine now. I'll turn it to the wrong side and stitch 1/2 inch. So after stitching, this is what I got. The 2 flanges are ready to sew to the sleeve. So I'll open up my zipper and turn the sleeve right side to right side, and I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch. So I matched my shoulder seam line to the sleeve grain line, and I match the armhole to the sleeve armhole. Then I'll go over and stitch at 1/2 inch. So at this point, you go over to your weaving machine and search that rough part of the sleeve. So the dress is ready right now. Thank you for watching. Bye.